So how's it going, Scott?
It's going. How are
Good
you?
to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too.
Mass has been going well and
Mass has
everything?
been going very well. Yeah, kind of in that summer lull when
Yeah.
Christmas is on the horizon, and
Yes.
kind of making sure that I know that it's out there.
So we have an exciting thing to talk about today.
Mhm.
Do you want to give a little bit of the history of how this first came up in the pastorate, or?
Well, basically, Our Lady of Sorrows hymnal is more than 20 years old, and the mass parts in it are not even used anymore, along with changes in what kind of music is allowed at Mass and certain composers that aren't allowed to be used at Mass. We found it's time for a new hymnal.
Yeah.
So in the interest of pastorate unity, Our Lady of Perpetual helps hymnals getting to be about 15 years old,
Yeah,
I think
it's
now.
equally old, yeah.
So it's about time for new hymnals all around.
One of the things I found inspiring along the journey was, on the topic of when it's time for a new hymnal, was that Father Zack's why focused on exactly that, the pastorate unity. The fact that you'll grow into being pastorate music director, and it makes it easiest for all of us, singers, musicians, and all, to know that number 580 is the same whether we come here or go there.
It is a good thing, especially for ritual masses like confirmation, weddings, funerals. So go back and forth with musicians between both places and kind of know what to expect.
So in your experience, when is it time to get a new hymnal?
Usually these things last about 15 to 20 years.
15, 20 years.
So we're right at the cusp of getting it. Because in that point, new music has been written that's entered into the ethos of not only the parish, but also in culture in general, new styles. But there's also the rock solid, we always go back to hymns. And then there are hymns that are in the hymnal that just don't get used. So they just get pushed off to the wayside. So updating these every so often is definitely necessary.
So people, from the congregation's perspective, sometimes people struggle with change. What would you say to individuals who are going to struggle and say, wait, no, our hymnals are good enough. We don't need to change anything at all?
Well, in some ways they're right. They are good enough. I mean, we still can use them. We can't use all of it, but we can still use it. You're not going to lose your church off of this. You're not going to lose the way you've been used to worshiping. It's going to enhance it.
Yeah, and one of the things I've heard you talk about, and you had experience with this over your many decades at another pastorate you worked at, where we'll have the same hymnal at both churches, but both churches will have the opportunity to pick their tried and true favorites, and they go in like a manual together or something
Supplement.
like that.
This was the one I did for North County. This is actually the music edition. The one that will be in the pews will just have the words and won't be as big. But the way that got started, it was for Corpus Christi. I was looking in the new hymnals that the pastorate purchased for Jesus, my Lord, my God, my all, a staple for Corpus Christi, and found it wasn't in there. Then I started looking through the hymnal and found a bunch of others that were used on a regular basis, such as Glory and Praise to Our God was not in there. Hail Mary, Gentle Woman wasn't in there. So by the time it was all finished, we had almost 200 hymns that we needed to add to it, which I'm expecting the same thing here. So.
Yeah, and for me, it was the more obscure songs. Like this past year, for those that don't know, and please feel free to jump in and add your wider experience to this, but basically the liturgical year goes in a 3-year cycle, A, B, C. And so sometimes holy days, feast days fall on a Sunday, whereas most of the time they don't. And it happened with All Souls this past year. And we found this beautiful song in the Gather hymnal called God Weeps with Those Who Weep and Mourn. I had never heard the song. I didn't know it existed. But wow, it was perfect for that day. So I was looking as we went through the hymnals for, hey, what about these gems that are kind of hidden there? And I'm kind of excited because we'll find new gems in the new hymnal, I'm sure.
Right. And some of the old gems are coming back. Oh Lord, I am not worthy is one of those. Just a closer walk with thee. Some of these staples that have meant a lot to so many people for so many years are coming back.
And in our time together, I've noticed as I edit the Masses from Sorrows, you really like those majestic entrance hymns that are like in 3/2 and well suited to the organ, those melodies with like the half notes to start it and then the run and then the half notes. Where does that come from? Is it just preference or?
Probably just preference the way I was taught, because to begin Mass, usually do something majestic. After all, you are going into the presence of the King of Kings and
Yes.
Lord of Lords.
Yeah.
And then after the closing hymn being something that sends everybody out on a high note usually. I mean, not always. I like on Palm Sunday to do a very somber hymn to end Mass because of what the week is going to be ahead of us.
Yeah.
But some of it is just the happenstance of what the readings are that Sunday too.
Yes.
But while I normally do that, on one hand, I'm not bound by it on the other.
Yeah.
So.
You bring up a good point, and it touches on how we choose music and what our limitations are. I don't know what the perception is, but we don't have the ability to just randomly pick songs. I don't know what your process is. I use this today's liturgy planning guide,
Mhm.
which gives you the day, and it gives you maybe 10 options for each.
Right.
Sometimes they're not great options though. So sometimes I'll also look in the Ordo, the daily prayers, and then the source book. The source book is generally reserved for clergy, but it does give a small list of songs for each day. So for example, I'm looking at, this is an Easter, the feast of St. Matthias Apostle. It's a Thursday, and it says Song of the Day, We Belong to You. So by having all these various options to choose, it allows me up there to customize songs that I know fit well with the ensemble.
Mhm.
What's your process like?
Okay, I usually use the GIA equivalent to that
Yeah.
as a starting point. Then come the readings for the day,
Yeah.
the season of the year, anything that might be happening in the world or in history that day, such as the Sunday closest to September 11th, sing Let There Be Peace on the Earth to
Oh,
begin
yes.
Mass. And then filling in as we need to with the old favorites. This time of year, there's usually not a whole lot of
Yeah.
perfect hymns to match all the
Yeah.
readings.
This time of year, I call it the billboard time of year for Catholic hymns, right?
Mhm.
We're picking the, very commonly well-known ones. So it helps with recruitment too, to be
Right.
doing songs that people know,
Right. But on the other hand, too, I usually do a 3-month rule where I don't sing the same hymn within a 3-month period. That way, the old favorites don't go stale.
Yeah, 3 months. I don't have a hard fast rule, but that sounds about right. If I notice we've done Here I Am, Lord, would not bring it up again in 3 months. There are exceptions,
Of
though. We
course.
have an all volunteer choir, all volunteer musicians, and sometimes we are building on the arrangements every time we approach it.
Mhm.
A good example of that is Take and Eat. That song has a beautiful opportunity for these, held fermatas and soft dynamics in the verse, and then the dynamics picking up
Mhm.
strongly in the refrain. And every time we pick it up, we're able to build on
Right.
those types of things.
And we're doing that this weekend.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. We did it last week. But a good song that we weren't able to do, we switched our rehearsal schedule to every other. So Wednesday nights we'll have singers. The next Wednesday we have musicians. The next Wednesday we have singers, which has been awesome, right? Because we're getting devoted attention instead of constantly have to stop to tweak.
Mhm.
And I wanted to do All That Is Hidden by Bernadette Farrell,
Okay.
because the lyrics of that song were literally word for word from the gospel reading that day.
Mhm.
But it had some off-time vocal melody.
Right.
So I was like, our singers didn't rehearse that week. So I want to visit that one in the next few weeks again.
And some of those 1960, 1970 styles are famous for those kind of things.
Yeah. Once it was decided that we were going to get a hymnal for the pastorate, that both churches were going to use the same book, what process did you go through to choose?
Went through looking at what the current hymnals are out by GIA and OCP, which are the two main Catholic publishers. There's some other ones out there that I do have samples of, kind of outliers, but going through what those two companies offer, we basically narrowed it down to two right off the bat. Journey Songs and One in Faith. Both of them had a lot of good points. Both of them had some things that were lacking. So it basically ended up being which one would be the more versatile for both communities. And with that, we went with One in Faith.
Before we introduce One in Faith, let's just share, I'd be surprised if everyone knew what both churches are currently using. What do we use at Our Lady of Sorrows?
We used Gather Comprehensive, which this edition was published in, let's see here, 2004.
Yeah.
So definitely over the mark of needing a new hymnal on this one. This one was still under the old translation of the Mass, so the front part where they have the Mass settings can't be used anymore.
At Perpetual Help, we use Gather 3, and we also have Today's Missal. When we make the transition, one thing I'm looking forward to is, while we're waiting for the supplement to be built, we'll just keep Today's Missal in the pew with it. That way, if we're looking for one of the regular songs that people want to hear, we've got this as a backup until the supplement's ready. But the Gather 3...
that would have been around 2010, I think.
Yep, 2010, 2011. Yeah, so this one is equally as old, a good hymnal. And would you also share with everyone what is in an all-in-one? Right? This has hymns, but it also has other stuff in it, right?
Well, first of all, St. Paul tells us to sing with psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs.
Yes.
So an all-in-one hymnal would include all three of those. But a lot of the liturgical celebrations are included in One in Faith. One of the best things is funerals in there. They have the order of funerals with hymns already populated in there, such as Amazing Grace. I heard the voice of Jesus say some of the standards, so that when we have funerals for people who usually don't come to church, or there's a lot of people who here aren't churchgoers, we can just announce where the funeral liturgy begins, and it's all right in a row with very minimal page turns. So that was one of those. Stations of the Cross is in there. There's a collection of psalms in there too, but we'll also, at least for the foreseeable future, still use Respond and Acclaim. So that's not going to change. Everybody's going to know those kinds of things.
So with this then, will people still be able to just pick up the hymnal with the readings, and at the beginning of Mass, we announce your readings are number 808 today, and they'll still be able to use this for that?
Yes, the edition does have the readings in it, in addition to still keeping the missalettes in the pews for a while in case people are attached to those for whatever reason. We can still do that, and like I bring my own missal, so I can just look over my shoulder for the reading, so that's fine. Yep.
When we were looking through this, one of the first things I looked for, we had another obscure day this year, which was the dedication of the Feast of the Lateran fell on a Sunday, and it has that too.
Yes, it does. Yes. Of course, for that Sunday, you can always pull out the church's one foundation and a couple of the standards.
I found a total of one hymn dedicated to that day. One Day Within Your Temple. I had never heard the song. It said it was in one of our hymnals, but I still had to end up printing it out.
With that too, One in Faith has a separate index volume that lists every Sunday in the year of all 3 years and gives hymn suggestions for all of them, as well as topicals, and every allusion to scripture in any of these hymns is also indexed in here. So if Father Zack is preaching on a particular scripture and there's a line in it, he can look up in here and we could use that hymn to complement his homily.
That's all. That's really good to know.
It might be like the end of verse 2 or something like that, where the allusion is, but it's all indexed in here.
So that's good. So these will just end up in the pews at both churches. At Perpetual Help, we'll keep Today's Missal, which is our second one, until the Pastorate supplement is ready, and the Pastorate supplement will have all the songs we want from the hymnals we currently have and like. And one of the things I'm noticing right now in church world universally is there's a return to tradition, and there's a desire for traditional music, but it doesn't seem universal. One of the things I found interesting in our demographic data for both of our parish regions is that it's about 50-50 between people who want the traditional experience and people who want, I hate the word contemporary, because I don't view what we're doing as contemporary. I view it as simply musically repackaging the words of the liturgy. To something a little more fresh, and it's important. I mean, what's important is the words, and that we're prompting the congregation to sing it. Not, I've always had issues with contemporary.
Traditional and contemporary can be used in any way anybody wants them to used. But also remember that even the most of the traditional hymns were contemporary at one point.
Yeah, that's well said. And I brought that up because in the ordering guide for GIA publications. One in Faith, the one we're getting, shows that they have 50% traditional hymns, 50% contemporary songs. And I was pleased to see some of the songs we really like at Perpetual Help, but we don't get to do that often, such as Shout to the Lord.
Right.
And it seems to, it also has In Remembrance, which is a beautiful song, I think, from the late 90s, early 2000s, and we'd use that song all the time. So it's nice to see those make it into a hymnal.
Right. Above All is in there too, which would have been sometime in the 90s, which is perfect for communion on Palm Sunday and for use on Good Friday. It is definitely more modern, but can be done in a very reverent traditional style. And that particular one punches the message of Holy Week big time.
Were there other songs you found in this one that you were excited that it had?
Shout to the North is in there. Of course, Blessed Assurance, Jesus is Mine is in there.
Oh, yeah,
which has been one of my favorites all my life.
Yeah, that's a great hymn. And I haven't thought of that in a long time. That's a great hymn.
And there's just a few, like just a closer walk with the, just some of the standards that a lot of people who grew up in church, regardless of their age, grew up singing, or had the grandmother who was singing in the kitchen while she was peeling potatoes.
Yeah. I like the new mass setting options that it's giving us. For those that don't know, would you just explain what a mass setting is?
Mass setting is the music for the parts of Mass that don't change. So the Kyrie, the Gloria, give or take the Creed. So some settings have it, some settings don't. The Holy, 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 the Memorial Acclamation, the Great Amen, and the Lamb of God. For instance, I like to use Mass of Creation for funerals because that's the most well-known of the settings.
That makes sense.
There's also times when it's not a good idea to use it for that. So,
I noticed, like right now we're using Heritage Mass, and you guys are using We Proclaim.
Right.
We're using Save Us Savior. So there's still, subtle nuances, I guess, between the two churches. I just like the melody of that one.
Right.
And because we have a few in the choir that are able to sing that high kid angel voice.
But that's Cat.
Yes. And it sounds nice, so I've always liked that one. And the first week we did it, everyone sang because they know the Heritage Mass, except that one. So we had to take a few weeks to, kind of really drive it out.
Right, sure. Yep. And the biggest thing about this, no one is going to lose their church over it.
Yeah.
You're going to still be singing the hymns you love.
Yeah.
And if there's subtle differences between us, well, we're all us now, between Sorrows and Perpetual Help, that's okay because it's two different groups of people.
Yeah. Well, three. And that brings up a good point that I wanted to add as well. So the Spanish community is still going to use Floricanto, but I did notice that this has way better bilingual options of music. It's a great step forward, and I feel happy and excited for the Spanish community because the Latin American community is becoming such a pivotal, foundational part of the Catholic Church across the country. And to see the hymnal kind of taking that step toward, hey, this is who we are. We need to make sure there's adequate and nice choices in there for them. And
a lot of it too would be very useful for bilingual masses where we could sing the same hymn in both English and Spanish.
Yes.
Without having any consternation over that. There's some hymns that are very common to both communities, and that's fine.
Yeah, and I would say one thing I'm hoping we can work together. I loved your idea about a pastorate bilingual choir. I hope it takes root, because one thing we need to do together in our bilingual program, we have about a dozen songs that we do together really well, but sometimes they don't fit for example, Holy Thursday. It's a very reverent mass, and we wanted something that was more beautiful and solemn, but we're limited in our repertoire. So I think we ended up doing Somos el Cuerpo, which is a fine song. It's an entrance hymn, but it's upbeat and peppy, and we would have liked something that was a little more solemn. So this will give us the opportunity to learn a wider repertoire of bilingual songs.
Right. And some of them are actually standard in the English-speaking community, but they're translated into Spanish. So a little give and take on that one. But yes, we could pull this off a lot more easier than what we have been. Although there are some of the tried and true ones for the ritual masses, like the one you just mentioned. We keep doing that one. because a lot of those work. But for Holy Thursday and Holy Saturday, they're kind of in a class all their own anyway.
Yeah.
So especially the Easter Vigil, since there's so many nuances to that liturgy that we really can't speak of that in connection with anything else, really.
Yeah. So now, the congregation knows we're getting new hymnals at both churches, that it's a move to unify our parish communities, to be worshiping together in spirit and truth out of the same hymnal. I'd like to steer the discussion, if you don't mind, to why is it important for people to be singing during the Mass? The congregation, we need them opening the book and singing the hymns. Why is that so important?
First of all, we're commanded to do that. St. Paul says to speak to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And I actually believe that's twice. I believe in Colossians, and the other reference is escaping me right now, but he uses that twice. I just don't remember where it is now. So, number one, we're commanded to. Number two, the instrument God gave all of us is the voice. And number three, it's going to survive the grave. Music survives death. And we read in Revelation where we join in the heavenly choir, and even at Mass, it's made very clear in the preface of the Eucharistic prayer that we're joining in the heavenly choir when we sing Holy, Holy, Holy.
I notice with the incoming newer, whatever you want to call Catholics too, that in addition to singing, the music is helping them to have a meaningful spiritual experience at the Mass, emotionally and mentally, almost a connectivity. Mm-hmm. So in addition to singing from the hymns, the music can help to set the appropriate mood for the Mass.
Right. And there are some times where the mood will need to change drastically during the Mass. Palm Sunday is the obvious example of that, where we enter very joyfully. Then very shortly thereafter, we hear the Passion in its entirety. So going back to joyful after that I don't think is exactly appropriate.
Yeah.
There are also times where communion in particular is a more solemn time during Mass. And the music needs to reflect that.
Yeah.
And then there are also some, not so much in our communities, but in other communities where a low Mass without music is what inspires them, where there's no singing, but that's not really applicable to us, since, other than for daily Masses.
Yeah, and I think about our modern times with so much emphasis on the social sciences and mental health, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that singing at Mass contributes to the person in a very healthy and meaningful way that keeps them coming back and participating in Mass and getting plugged into ministries.
Right, absolutely. It's allowing them to connect with God in a very profound way. And that's why we do very different styles too, maybe even during the same Mass, because what might speak to one person at one point might not speak to another person, but give it about 5 more minutes when the music changes, and the opposite happens. First Sunday of Advent is when we want to. So we got a little time to go through this. Yeah.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. So the new hymnals will be in the pews for the first Sunday of Advent.
Right.
What can we be doing in the meantime to either reconnect or connect for the first time with our hymnals when we go into Mass? Let's say it's somebody who maybe doesn't really open it or pay attention, not that the music doesn't move them, but they don't really follow along. They're more listeners.
Right.
What can we be doing to kind of get to know this part of the Mass while we're waiting for the new hymnals?
Open the hymnal up and look at the lyrics before Mass starts. If you arrive a few minutes earlier, just look at the one I just happen to open up to right now is a very well-known hymnal of Divine All Loves Excelling. To read through that as part of your preparation for Mass, and to see which hymns really resonate with you, and how that can be used to strengthen your time with God at Mass.
That's right. I want to refer to that song I was telling you about.
God weeps with those who weep.
Yes. God weeps with us who weep and mourn. God's tears flow down with ours, and God's own heart is bruised and worn from all the heavy hours of watching while the soul's bright fire burned lower day by day, and pulse and breath and love's desire dimmed down to ash and clay. Wow.
Kind of reminds me of the Dicere, what was in the old Latin
Yes.
Mass,
Yes.
which I believe is still an option to do on All Souls Day when it doesn't fall on a Sunday.
Would you tell people a little more about what that is? Because I noticed
Okay.
it's popular now. It's making a
It is.
resurgence. The Dies Irae. What is that?
Okay, it's part of the old Latin Mass. On certain days, well, even in the Novus Ordo, there are certain days where between the second reading of the epistle and the gospel acclamation is a liturgical poem. And usually it's Easter, Pentecost, and Corpus Christi are the ones that most of us would be familiar with. There is one for All Souls Day, it's the Dicere, Day of Wrath, Day of Mourning, which describes God's judgment on the world and pleading for mercy. Most famously, Mozart's Lacrimosa comes from that.
Yeah.
So, but that's again in Latin, but it's a very, very sobering poem. It used to be read at every funeral mass. And that kind of makes everybody pay attention to the whole idea of judgment. I mean, yeah, we stress the whole idea of the resurrection, the idea of spending eternity in heaven with God and the fullness of all things. But there's also that component that seems to have gone by the wayside that still should dictate how we live every day. But that's what the Dicere is, Day of Wrath, Day of Mourning, and depending on the translation, where it goes from there. But it talks about fire and asks for Jesus to have mercy on us.
So exciting. So we have a new hymnal. It launches at Advent. It's the same at both churches. It sounds like we've made every effort. I know your perspective was musical, and it was based on your decades of experience directing liturgical music. I tried to bring the perspective of how does a hymnal influence a congregation, and I called around to various places. Hey, have you ever had a hymnal make or break you? Did you ever get a hymnal and it destroyed you? Did you get a hymnal and people loved it? And it's apparently not that dramatic.
It isn't. Most of the time, people are used to, of course, people have their old friends to a lot of people, and it will still be. And I would imagine if you're attached to one, when we make the transition, you'll be able to take the respective hymnal home with you to use it for your own liturgical uses at home or your own I'll probably say devotional practices over liturgical practices at that point. But yes, nobody's going to lose their church. Nobody's going to lose their friends over this.
And to a degree, would you agree that we're not really changing in that? If there are songs that people feel very strongly about, that's the purpose of the Pastorate supplement.
Right.
Is it's a book that will sit in pews at both churches, and it will contain the best loved songs that may not be included in One in Faith.
Right. That's true. When we were looking at Journey songs in One in Faith, there were collections in both of them that we'd have to put in a supplement.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. It's nothing to lose sleep over. But definitely, everybody can be able to worship the way that they're accustomed to.
Well, is there anything else you want people to know about this process? Do you want people to reach out to you if they have questions?
They can always reach out with questions, but one of the things, too, is everybody's going to have the opportunity to make memorial and honor donations and can actually purchase the hymnal for use in the church and have a little sticker in the front that says this hymnal was given in honor of my beloved grandmother by whoever, or whatever special occasion, somebody's first communion or anything like that. Everybody will have the opportunity to participate in getting these hymnals too. That's
a beautiful point. And what he's talking about, as you can see, is at the beginning of the hymnal, there's a sticker with a name. You know, this hymnal is dedicated in honor, to the glory of God, in honor of any of the above. Well, thank you for your time.
Sure, no problem. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we're excited about the new hymnal, One in Faith.
That's the Pew edition.
Yeah.
And this is the choir edition.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of it will have 4-part harmonies.
Yeah. In your Pew edition, you'll have the main melody and then the readings for a given day. So yeah, we're ready to roll.
We'll have the opportunity to learn new mass settings while still keeping the old one.
Yes, yes.
So we might be up to knowing 10 mass settings as parishioners, which There's nothing wrong with that.
No, that would be wonderful.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Well, good. Have a
Okay.
good day.
You too.